Okay, let's set up let's walk through how we set up the communications object or the comms object inside of your NAC app. So that's going to replace the email functionality on the forms itself. We're going to utilize form rules to kind of populate this communications object. However, the comms object is now going to hold anything in terms of communication that is going out of your app, out of your system. Okay, so you'll notice I have just a very basic project management app. I've got a comms object down here. Let's walk through all these different fields. Auto increment, date time created, and date time updated. Those should be control fields that you put on every object when you create a new object. Just through our experience, through the years, those are things that should be there, right? If you ever want to do an integration, you want to know when records were created or records were updated, so that you don't have to process everything in the object. Trust me, just put those on there, and you'll be happy. The type here, I have email, SMS, and fax. That way, the single communication object can hold everything that's coming out of your system. We're only going to do email in this demo. Subject, pretty obvious. Message, pretty obvious. I've got two connections here. One to the project, because that's the project is where you want to associate any communications that went out with that project to that project itself, to the communication, as well as the project manager, right? So that way you can actually have a log of comms that went out to that specific manager across all their different projects. To email address, obviously pretty self-explanatory. From, same thing. This origin form, I'm gonna show you why that's important, and it'll save your so much time for you down the road. So just bear with me. I'll show you that in a little bit. Processed is a flag that you'll set based on the integration with Sendgrid. So if Sendgrid has sent the email, this will be flagged as yes, and that's the flag that it'll let it know that it needs to be sent. And then the communication ID, confirmation ID. This comes from Sendgrid. There's a character string that associates it with the actual message that went out. We'll store that here on the message, on the communication field. Okay, so that all that makes sense. So let's look about how we trigger this to actually fire. So I've got in just some basic pages set up here. I've actually got an edit project page right here. You'll notice we have a project manager assignment. That's kind of our field that we want to kind of focus on. That's the one that's, if it changes, it's the one that's going to fire off all the goodies and make sure that record gets created. So this is where we're going to bypass. So we're going to bypass this email on the form because, sure, yeah, you could do it through there, but there's some issues with that. Let's say you have 500 forms and emailers are going out and you want to edit them or stop them, right? Which form did it come from, right? And that's really hard to find. Now, again, that's where that source, the origin field comes in, and I'll show you that here in a second. And then the rules, we're going to use rules to actually create the record that's in the communications object. Okay. Now you'll see that this is the form. This is the link up here in the builder to the form. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy this, guys, and I'll show you here in a second why that's important. So if I go to the rules, I go to record rules because we're going to be creating a record. Here's here's what's going to be happening. So we've got insert a connected record to the communications object, right? That's what we want to do. Date time updated. You never want to, by the way, you never want to set the date time created with a form rule because you can just set it to be created when the record is created, and that's the only time it ever gets set. But date time updated should always be controlled by the form. Type, email, obviously. Subject, we've just got you've been assigned as the PM. Please log into the app is the message. We're setting the project manager to the form field here. That's actually where we're going to get this project manager email address. So this is the related connected value so that we are sending the message to the right person, right? That's the to. From, we can set this to whatever you want. Just make sure that you're using the domain that you set up when you set up your Sendgrid account. So don't use a different domain or it won't go through or they'll reject it, right? So here's the origin form. I took a copy of this. It's actually bigger now because I'm in there, but essentially what I want to do is track which form this communication record came from, right? And once that's there, and it sets it by default because we're setting it up right now. Once it's there, it's really easy to find where that message came from, where its origin was, which form it was. So you can imagine this app gets so big that you have 500 forms in here. Now you know exactly which form actually created that message. Very, very useful. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that, and let's go out here and give it a refresh. Whenever you make changes in the builder, obviously you need to make a you need to refresh your app. Okay. All right. So we're back. We've refreshed the app, and here's that edit form. Okay. So what we want to do is we're testing this, right? We're going to change this Harold Boone to myself. I'm not going to change anything else, just because I want this to fire off. Okay. So I'll go ahead and submit this. And as you know, we've set up this form to create, not only update the record that was obviously in the form, but also create a separate related record in the communications object. So let's go back to our builder and check that. You can see here, this is this number 2, the date time created, date time updated, which was exactly 12:30. Type email, you have been assigned. You can see all this stuff is populating. Project manager is myself. The email address for that person, the from email address, and you'll see this right here, this origin form. If I ever needed to get back to that form to edit anything, boom, it's right there. It's very nice, very useful. I highly recommend doing that. Okay, so that's how you actually set up the form to create the record, which represents the message that's going to be sent by Sendgrid. I'll put together a couple other videos here with the Sendgrid piece, as well as the make scenarios to make those things work, for lack of a better term. And thanks, guys. I appreciate it.